Hello, my friends. I am Frederick Douglass, and I want to tell you about a story, something that happened in my life. For those of you who don't know me, I was born in slavery, and I became known as one of the greatest leaders of my time, one of the greatest black leaders of my time. When I was a slave, there was a time when I was sent to Baltimore to live with people called Mr. and Mrs. Auld. And when I first met Mr. and Mrs. Auld, they were standing on their porch. And when I walked up to their porch, when I was walking up the yard under their porch, they were smiling at me. This was the first time I ever seen white people smile at me as a black person. I had a warm feeling to see those smiles on their faces. Right away, upon my living with the Aulds, Mrs. Auld began teaching me how to read and write. For she felt it necessary that I was to be educated and the other slaves were to be educated. In the South, it was forbidden for me to look in the eyes of my slave owners or of any white person who I came in contact with. When I lived with Mrs. Auld, she did not care if I looked her in her eyes. She wanted us to have dignity in her presence. Soon after living with her, and she had never owned slaves of her own, had never lived with slaves or had never owned them. She had a very kind heart. So upon living with her, she began teaching me how to read. She began teaching me how to write. She taught me how to spell, how to read 3 or 4 letter words. And my learning was going well until one day her husband came home, Mr. Auld, and found her teaching me how to read. And at this, he became very upset at his wife. And he let her know that she was in no means to continue teaching me how to read. Because as he told her, and I heard the whole exchange, he told her that to teach a slave how to read is to spoil a slave. To teach a slave, to educate a slave, is to make them uncontrollable, to make them unmanageable. One of the ways to keep a slave is to keep them uneducated. He said this, give a slave an inch and they will take an ell. After hearing this, I knew that my quest for life had to be in becoming free and getting education. Little did Mr. Auld know that he had set a fire in my soul, in my life, in my being, to become the man that you all know me as, Frederick Douglass. He set a fire in my soul to become educated. I knew that the great thing that was being hidden from me was education, was knowledge. And from this point on, I set out to be educated and to gain knowledge. I'm glad you listened today. My name is Frederick Douglass once again, and I wanted to tell you about a story from my life. Thank you for listening.